Stephen, huge fan, man. So this is awesome to like finally sit down and chat with you.
Thanks.
Um, yeah, and I'm really appreciative that you enjoy the VHS as much as myself.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I want to get into this film. It 825 Forest Road, marks your first film outside of the Hell House found footage universe. What inspired you to step away from that format and explore, a more traditional narrative structure? Because we knew you had it in you, so now we finally get to see it happen.
Oh yeah, no, and thank you for saying that. I I think well, I went to film school, so I was trained filmmaker in traditional styles, but Hell House, the format fit better for found footage. So that's why Hell House. I enjoy found footage horror myself, and also Hell House fit that because I think the scares were better for Hell House, but also the budget and everything we had for Hell House, it had to be found footage, and I'm grateful for that because I think it's better for that. But um, it's not that, and then but I didn't want to always make found footage. That was just it made sense for Hell House. Doesn't mean it's going to
Yeah.
make sense for the next story. So and I really wanted to get back to traditional filmmaking because that just made three Hell Houses in a row. They're all found footage, and I love traditional filmmaking. I love covering a scene. I love trying to find creative ways to cover a scare rather than just it's always the scares through the medium of why the person's holding a camera and recording it. It's fun to do, but after a while, you want to get back to traditional ways of filmmaking, which is what we did here, and also for the final Hell House as well.
Awesome. Yeah. This film, it revolves around Chuck Wilson's search for a house that seemingly doesn't exist. What drew you to that premise? And was there any real life stories or urban legends that influenced that?
Yeah, so for me, I always just wanted to make a haunted house tale, even though it's a cliche. It's been done over and over. I personally love haunted house stories, just anything from just like short stories to novels to movies. And I really wanted to write my own. And what it came about was in 2018, my wife and I finally we left the city and we moved into a small town. And when we got here into our small town, we everybody we met had a story to tell about the town's history. And unfortunately, none of it was haunted. But in my head, I was like, well, what if it was? What if somebody had beware of X, and something like that. So that's how like any, seed starts in your head for a story. It's like it could be just a passing conversation like that. And that's really what happened. And it really was a passing conversation with like a neighbor. And it just grew from there. And then it said, like, why not just write like I've always wanted to make like the small town legend story. Like, what is every small town has some folklore to it, some story to it. What is this fictional town's folklore? And then start from there and then start making the narrative. But yeah, that's how it came about.
Awesome. Yeah, that's kind of cool to hear. I myself, I live in like a suburb of Houston, and so I mean, it's like small town galore, and I immediately connected to that with this film because like it just felt very like Midwest, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it's very. I was drawn in with that aspect of it, so it's kind of neat to hear from the horse's mouth, that it was that like that's exactly where it came from.
Right. Yeah, and then
And
just also just leaving the city is could be just such a different. It could affect people different ways.
yeah,
So I think it has a different effect on our characters a different way. Trying to adjust to being out, and leaving a city when you're used to that life, and then leaving to the burbs or to like these small towns is it's an adjustment period. And so how does that affect people? And then when you have to deal with something else, that's also something, you know.
yeah. And speaking of something else, the ghost of Helen Foster, has been haunting Ashland Falls for decades. Can you talk a bit about her backstory and how you approached crafting that entity? Because I think that that's kind of the meat of this, and that's what everyone wants to know about. How did that come to be?
Yeah, it's I like the idea of a ghost that affects you depending on everybody's different. So and actually when I started writing this in 2019 and had a lot of effect, a lot of it's funny enough that some of Helen's sensibilities or how she affects people came about from COVID, actually. And I would always remember when in 2020 you knew someone who got COVID, sometimes they would be like, yeah, but I just had a sniffle. And then the other time someone was like, I was in bed for 2 weeks, couldn't move. And it's always like, that's almost how Helen affects you. It's different for everybody, and it all depends on the person. And why is that? And some people can live in this town and never catch COVID or never see Helen. But some people live in this town and they will be bedridden by COVID, or they will see Helen and it will haunt, and Helen will haunt. And so it's different for everybody. And why is that? It was fun to write and explore, and a little bit it came from infectious disease. So,
That's kind of funny. Yeah. You kind of touched on this too, and I just kind of want to see if there's any chance for maybe expanding on it a bit because I thought this was such a cool quote from Shudder. They've described this film as a twist on a haunted house tale. Is there anything else maybe that sets this film apart from other haunted house stories? Because I know you said you always kind of wanted to do one, and it does kind of it's a little different than a lot of the haunted house films that I've seen recently. So I was wondering if there was anything else maybe that you wanted to throw out as far as that goes.
no, I think it's really what sets it apart is the non-linear timeline, storytelling in it. And
Yeah.
I love non-linear storytelling. It's my favorite kind, and that's what Hell House is. Hell House is non-linear. It jumps apart different timelines within found footage. Um, And so I think if I were, while I'm doing a story that's been done over and over, it's as old as time is as haunted house tales. What's a fun way to do it is present the characters to us in different chapters and have those chapters overlap. And I think when you have those chapters overlap, I think it's going to be fun for the audience to find little things, almost Easter eggy in a sense, in everybody's chapter that kind of tells a little bit of the tale and almost might even foreshadow what's something else in someone else's story. So it's fun to watch, pay attention to everybody's chapter because they interact and affect everyone else's chapter. Even the little things, the big things and the little things.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree, especially with the Hill House series. That's something that I always like to go back and
Yeah.
revisit those because there's things that like I might not have noticed the first time, or what kind of like what you said. But kind of keeping that in mind, though, do you see potential for maybe expanding this story into a franchise like Hill House? Because I do think that there is a lot of unresolved, or maybe there's a lot of potential for expanding this universe a little bit further.
Oh yeah, this is something I've always thought about. Because I did start thinking about what if we were to do anything else in this universe, what would it be? And my immediate thought was when the town first realized that Helen was the thing and
Yeah.
still around. And that would like when the haunting began, I think would be an interesting story to tell. And it'd be soon after the events of what happened to Helen, not to spoil anything, but I think would be a prequel, would be a very fun place to tell more of the story. Again, I mean, whether or not I ever do that is another story altogether. But it would be if I were ever to do that, that's kind of would be the angles where I would explore it.
Awesome. Yeah. And to wrap up, you've mentioned in the past, or maybe even recently, that you wanted to secure bigger budgets for future horror projects. Has working on this film influenced how you approach the Hell House lineage? I'm kind of curious to see how working on this project maybe influences your next steps ultimately.
Yeah, well, I think 825 is a big reason why I think Lineage is something that I'm very excited for because I think I having had 825 in my back pocket going into non-found footage with Hell House it was a great experience, which means I kind of knew what I needed to do in Lineage in
Yeah.
order to make a non-found footage film, like, learn from all my mistakes in 825. Not that we were having mistakes all the time, but just like it was my first
Getting your feet
non-found
wet.
footage feature. So we were just more zoned in by Lineage because of my experience in 825 that I think Lineage is a better film because 825 happened. And it was easier if Lineage was my first non-found footage film, maybe it would have been different, but I feel because I had 825 under my belt that I was just so much more excited and it was a well-oiled machine going
Yeah.
into Lineage.
Yeah, just prepared ultimately, which yeah, that's awesome to hear, man, because I was excited. I was excited for 825, but I'm extremely excited for Lineage. So, yeah, for
No,
what it's worth, man.
thank you. No, it's Lineage is in the final stages, getting the scores happening now. It's awesome. I'm so excited for Lineage and obviously 825 this Friday. So yeah, thanks. Thanks for
Of course, man. Excellent. And here at CineDump, we let the doers know how they're doing, Stephen, and you are doing just fine. Thank you so much for your time. And I'll see you again soon, man. Lineage, here we come. But yeah, 825 coming out this Friday.
awesome, Jesse. Thanks so much.